Imagine being seated just feet away from a half-ton lion. No glass, no fence, no barrier between you and 400 pounds of muscle, teeth, and fury. Just sand, stone, and the roar of 50,000 people screaming for blood. You can feel the breath of the beast. You can smell it. And if things go wrong, and they often did, the last thing you will ever see is the Colosseum sky. Welcome to the front row of the greatest killing ground in human history. The Colosseum. Its very name conjures images of grandeur, spectacle, blood, and glory. Built between 70 and 80 AD under Emperor Vespasian and completed by his son Titus, the Flavian Amphitheater, as it was formerly known, seated up to 50,000 screaming citizens of Rome. It was the beating heart of Roman entertainment, a machine designed not just to host violence, but to celebrate it, to organize it, to make it beautiful. But here's a question historians rarely ask. Where exactly did you want to be sitting? Because seating at the Colosseum was not simply about comfort or prestige. It was about survival. And the closer you sat to the arena floor, to the sand they called the arena, the more your life was in genuine, measurable danger. Today we are going inside the most hazardous seats in the ancient world. We are pulling back the marble curtain on what it truly meant to sit in the front row of the Roman Colosseum. And we promise you, it was far, far more dangerous than you were ever taught in school. The Colosseum was brilliantly engineered, and its seating was no accident. Roman society was rigidly hierarchical, and that hierarchy was physically embedded into the architecture of the amphitheater itself. At the very bottom, closest to the arena floor, sat the emperor, his family, the Vestal Virgins, and the highest-ranking senators. This section was known as the podium, a raised stone platform that separated the most important Romans from the killing that happened below them. But raised is a relative term. The podium sat perhaps 3 to 4 meters above the arena floor. That's roughly the height of a tall ceiling in a modern house. Above the podium sat the equestrian class, wealthy Roman knights. Above them, ordinary Roman citizens. And at the very top, in the cheap seats exposed to the open sky, sat women, slaves, and the poor. So the closer you were to wealth and power in Rome, the closer you sat to the spectacle of death. Proximity to the violence was itself a symbol of status. Only the most important Romans sat close enough to see the sweat on the gladiators' faces and to be sprayed by their blood. And that proximity had consequences. Chapter 2. The Beasts. The single greatest danger of sitting in the front row was not the gladiators. It was the animals. The Romans called these events Venationes, beast hunts. They were among the most popular spectacles held in the Colosseum, and they involved creatures that most Romans had never seen before. Lions imported from North Africa, tigers from the Persian Empire, elephants, hippopotami, rhinoceroses, ostriches, crocodiles, bears, bulls, panthers, and wild boars. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, of animals slaughtered over the course of a single day's entertainment. But animals, as any modern zookeeper will tell you, are profoundly unpredictable. And in the Colosseum, things went wrong. Regularly. Roman historian Cassius Dio recorded one particularly alarming incident during the reign of Emperor Commodus. A hippopotamus broke through a barrier. A lion leapt from the arena floor. There were accounts of ostriches running loose among panicked spectators. We know from Pliny the Elder that even trained elephants, used in stage hunts, occasionally turn on the crowd when wounded, panicking in unpredictable directions. The Romans were not oblivious to this danger. In fact, they engineered against it. The outer wall of the podium, the wall between the front rows and the arena, was studded with ivory rollers or metal cylinders embedded into the top. If an animal attempted to climb that wall, the rollers would spin and send the beast sliding back down. It was a clever, elegant, and entirely necessary safety mechanism. And yet it was not foolproof. The wall was not infinitely high. A sufficiently powerful or determined animal, particularly a big cat at full sprint, could potentially clear it. The Romans knew this. Front row spectators knew this. And yet they sat there anyway, because the view was worth the risk. If the animals were an unpredictable danger, the gladiators were precisely choreographed one, most of the time. Gladiatorial combat was a headline event of the Colosseum. Matches were carefully structured. Each gladiator type, the Murmillo with his fish-crested helmet, the Retiarius with his net and trident, the Secutor, the Thrakes, the Hoplomachus, was trained at dedicated schools called Ludi. These men were expensive investments. A good gladiator could fight dozens of times before dying, and their owners, Lenisti, were not eager to see them killed unnecessarily. The famous thumbs-up, thumbs-down decision after a fallen gladiator was defeated was actually more complex than Hollywood suggests. The crowd, and ultimately the editor, the organizer of the games, would decide the loser's fate. Surrender, called missio, was common. Many gladiatorial bouts ended without death. But weapons, once moving at speed, do not always respect choreography. A trident thrown in a spinning arc, a short gladiator sword deflected from a shield and sent spinning into the crowd. These were real possibilities, and the front row, closest to the action, bore the greatest risk of being struck by a misfired weapon, a collision of bodies, or the sheer explosive chaos that erupted when two trained killers collided with maximum force just meters away. Spectators also faced something modern sports fans would not expect: blood. Vast quantities of it. In the front rows, you did not just watch violence. You were touched by it. Droplets of blood from the arena could, and historical sources suggested, reach front row spectators. Roman physicians noted that some citizens sought out Colosseum blood as a folk remedy for epilepsy, believed to carry the strength of the fallen warrior. The front row gave you easy access to this gruesome medicine. The midday hour of the Colosseum was often reserved for something darker than gladiatorial combat or beast hunts. It was the hour of the Noxii, the condemned. These were not trained fighters. They were criminals, prisoners of war, political enemies, and, during certain periods of Roman history, Christians and members of persecuted religious minorities. Their deaths were not contests. They were punishments designed to be public, brutal, and humiliating. Some were killed by animals, a punishment called damnatio ad bestias. Others were forced to fight each other, unarmed. Some were crucified. Some were burned alive. Some were given weapons and forced to fight trained gladiators with no combat training whatsoever. The outcome was never in doubt. These executions were the most physically volatile spectacles in the arena. Burning bodies could send embers into the crowd. Animals unleashed on unarmed humans were far less controlled than animals in a structured venatio hunt. The chaos was the point. The Romans wanted the condemned's death to be disordered and undignified, a spectacle of absolute imperial power. 4 front-row spectators. This midday chaos was perhaps the most genuinely dangerous period of the day. The arena floor during an execution was pure, purposeful disorder. And disorder, as the Romans well knew, does not respect seat assignments. The Colosseum was not just dangerous at ground level. It was dangerous from above. One of the most remarkable features of the Colosseum was its Velarium, a massive retractable awning system that shaded the crowd from the Mediterranean sun. This canvas and rope structure was operated by sailors of the Roman Navy, specially stationed in Rome for this purpose. The ropes and poles required to support the Velarium were enormous, heavy, and under constant tension. Ancient sources suggest that the Velarium could never fully shade the arena floor itself, only the seating areas. But the machinery supporting it was complex, and a failure in those ropes, those poles, those anchoring systems could send massive weight cascading down toward the seats below. Beyond the Velarium, the Colosseum itself was subject to the structural stresses that all ancient architecture endured. Earthquakes hit Rome. The city sits in a geologically active region. Inscriptions found at the Colosseum record restoration work after seismic damage, work that was needed because stones cracked, sections shifted, and the building settled under its own enormous weight over centuries. A front-row spectator during a seismic event faced a uniquely terrifying scenario. 50,000 panicking Romans above them, the arena dropped below, and an ancient stone amphitheater shaking around them. The exits, called vomitoria, were numerous and carefully designed for rapid evacuation, but the mathematics of 50,000 people trying to exit simultaneously were not comforting. The most dangerous thing about the Colosseum's front row may not have been what you could see. It was what you could not. The Romans had no germ theory. They did not know that the enormous quantities of animal and human blood soaking into the Colosseum sand, that same sand that gave the arena its name, were a breeding ground for disease. They did not know that the visceral spray reaching front row seats carried pathogens. They did not know that the hypogeum, the vast underground network of tunnels, cages, and machinery beneath the arena floor, was a source of contamination, animal waste, and biological material that floated upward into the crowd. Rome was already a city plagued by epidemic disease. The Antonine Plague devastated the empire during the reign of Marcus Aurelius. The plague of Cyprian killed thousands per day at its peak. Gatherings of tens of thousands of people in an enclosed stone structure, watching events that involved massive quantities of animal and human biological material, were almost certainly vectors of disease transmission. The front row, closest to the source of that biological material, bore the greatest exposure risk. Senators sitting in the podium, men of the highest status in Rome, may have been, from a purely epidemiological standpoint, the most at-risk individuals in the entire building. History does not record how many senators died of illness contracted at the games. It simply was not a connection the ancient world was equipped to make. Given all of this, the animals, the weapons, the blood, the fire, the disease, the structural risk, who actually chose to sit in the front row? The answer is the most powerful people in Rome. And they sat there not despite the danger, but because of it. Roman culture valued courage. Virtus, the Latin word that gives us virtue, literally meant manliness, strength, and the willingness to face danger without flinching. A senator who sat in the front row, surrounded by death, unmoved, unafraid, was performing Roman masculinity at its highest register. He was demonstrating that he was not merely above the violence, he was adjacent to it, comfortable with it, deserving of his power because he feared nothing. The emperor, above all, used his proximity to the arena as political theater. When Commodus, perhaps the most notorious of the arena-obsessed emperors, descended from his box and participated in the Venatio himself, killing animals in the arena, he was making a statement about his own godlike power. He was the most dangerous man in the most dangerous seat in the world, and he wanted Rome to see it. The front row of the Colosseum was not just seating. It was political statement. It was ideological performance. It was Rome telling itself what Rome believed about power, life, death, and the natural order of things. And occasionally, it got senators killed. The Colosseum still stands in Rome today. You can walk through it. You can stand where the arena floor once was. You can look up at the rings of stone seating that climb toward the sky and imagine 50,000 voices rising in a single sound, a sound that has not been heard in 15 centuries. And if you stand at the edge of the podium level, where the marble seats of the senators once were, and look down at the sand below, or where the sand once was, you will understand something that no textbook quite captures. The Romans who sat here knew exactly what could happen to them. They knew the line could clear the wall. They knew the trident could go wide. They knew the burning body could send sparks into the crowd. They sat here anyway, because in Rome, there was something more dangerous than sitting in the front row of the Colosseum, and that was being afraid to. This has been your narrator. Stay curious, stay courageous, and we will see you in the next episode.